A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And good evening. I'm Guy Relford, and this is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. And I'll tell you what, I hope you're enjoying this, what has turned out to be a beautiful weekend. I started my weekend, like I'm sure several of you have, in Louisville. Yesterday, I went down for the annual National Firearms Law Conference, which is part of the N.R.A. annual meeting going on in Louisville. And after I fought through all the construction and the traffic and the somewhat disarray of downtown Louisville, was able to go to the annual National Firearms Law Conference, which I try to go to every year. I was there with my friend Kirk Freeman and Doug McMillan and we other gun lawyers, and we try to go every year. We go as a group usually, and it's a great conference, but it's part of the N.R.A. annual meeting. And I'm going to talk quite a bit about the goings-on at the N.R.A. annual meeting this year, thus far anyway. And by the way, I was not down there today. So if you were down there yesterday or down there today, or you're currently driving back from Louisville, hopefully not stuck in traffic on 65, but we'd love to hear from you on your experience at the annual meeting. But one thing of note, as I mentioned on the Gun Guy Facebook page here just a bit ago, is that yesterday at a separate event, what they call the N.R.A. ILA for Institute of Legislative Action, which is part of N.R.A. and really sort of the political wing of N.R.A., N.R.A. announced that it was endorsing Donald Trump for president. And Donald then appeared and gave a 32-minute speech to the NRA members that were there in attendance. And again, this was part of the NRA annual meeting. I think this was in the KFC Yum Center, if I'm not mistaken. I wasn't there because I was getting educated on gun laws at the legal conference, which was very good. But I've now watched the whole video, which you can find on YouTube, of Donald's speech. And I thought it was very interesting. I was particularly interested in hearing from the Donald on gun-related issues because as we've gone through the nomination process and the primary process, I've had some concerns about Donald's support and defense of the Second Amendment over the years. And anyone's entitled to go through somewhat of a transformation, a little bit of a metamorphosis in terms of their political views. And, Donald's no exception to that. And the fact that he made this comment or that comment, 10 or 20 or more years ago, I'm not going to necessarily hold against him if I find credible the idea that he's changed his views. And changing your idea on any given thing is not a horrible thing. I listen to Dana Lash a lot on WIBC on weekday afternoons, and Dana is the first one to tell you she went through the early part of her life as a fairly far-left liberal. Well, she's now about as conservative as you can get, and I think no one should hold it against her, the fact that she changed her views over time. And I don't know that there's anything that remarkable about Donald's changes over time. I think, a lot of people say, as I have said, that they have some concerns over whether he is or is not a quote-unquote true conservative. And I'm not sure today, given what's happening in politics generally, that I even know anymore what the hell a quote-unquote true conservative really is. I can tell you what I think a true conservative should be, and I can certainly tell you what principles and values with respect to gun control and protection and promotion and defense of the Second Amendment and the defense of gun rights generally in this country that a Republican candidate should have in terms of representing our side of that debate. And Donald Trump has said some different things over the years. Donald Trump said in his book, and he's also said verbally in recorded interviews at different times, that he supported the assault weapons ban. that was in place from 1994 to 2004. There's one quote that gets played a lot where Donald says essentially, I hate the whole idea of guns. And, when I've heard that, even when I've heard that recently, that didn't get me too excited because in my mind, when I heard it, and I didn't hear the entire context, but to me, what he was saying was, the way I took it, it was that he generally hates the idea that we need guns in order to defend ourselves, that we live in a society where guns are needed, and hates that idea. I get that. I mean, in a hypothetical sense, if I had my druthers and I could snap my fingers and we all lived in some utopia where we all got along and there were no crimes or criminals, or the need for the ability to defend yourself from bad people, well, yeah, I think we'd all take that option. But obviously that's ridiculously naive because ever since Cain killed Abel with a rock, we've had the need to defend ourselves on this planet. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. But that's how I took Donald's comment about hating the whole idea of guns. I don't think that was an anti-Second Amendment comment. But I think that gets portrayed that way too often. But still, him saying that he supported the extremely ineffectual, in fact, non-effectual assault weapons ban that existed for a little over 10 years in this country, that was some concern to me as we started down this road of him being a viable candidate for president and now being the presumptive nominee from the Republican side. So I was extremely interested and have been, not just in terms of his comments yesterday and his speech at the N.R.A. annual meeting, but generally, my question has been, can we as gun owners trust Donald Trump to defend the Second Amendment? It's been an open question in my mind. And I have to tell you, and we've got various audio segments that we're going to play throughout the show. And Donald said an awful lot of exactly the right things. How do I come down on it? Well, first of all, if I have any question in my mind about Donald Trump and his support of the Second Amendment, one thing I have absolutely no doubt in my mind about is Hillary Clinton and how she feels about the Second Amendment. So when I go in to cast my ballot in November, that's not going to be a hard choice because I know exactly what I'm getting with Hillary Clinton. And Donald said several things about that. And he mentioned the open Supreme Court seat right now since Justice Scalia's death. And he mentioned several other things about Hillary's positions on guns and gun control. So we don't have any question about how Hillary feels. In fact, her speech tonight in Florida, in advance of the Florida primary, is primarily going to be about gun control. She's already put that out there. So I don't have any hesitancy whatsoever in supporting and voting for Donald as president. But in terms of what I expect to see or what I expect to get in a president, I like the fact that Donald is clearly making an attempt to answer those questions for us. And I'm hoping, there's no question in my mind that I'm going to go vote for Donald in November. Because the very last thing on earth I want is another President Clinton. And the best way for me to help avoid that in the voting booth is obviously to vote Republican. But I'm also hoping that some folks out there that have been either so far as being part of the Never Donald crowd, or maybe just more fence sitters, and including those people who clearly just don't want to support Hillary because she's Hillary, because she's a despicable, dishonest, corrupt human being who also wants to destroy the Second Amendment. And I'm hoping that as Donald becomes clearer and clearer in his message, and by the way, I thought his message at the convention during his speech was credible. I believed it. I may be being gullible, but I don't think so. And by the way, it was also the best of any speech I've heard him give or seen him give. He wrote it, believe it or not. He as he did here in Indianapolis, a lot of his speeches are right off the cuff. You have the idea that he has certain bullet points that he wants to hit, or he's just so used to hitting, he just naturally does. But he actually wrote this one down. He mentioned a couple of times, he said, there's some things here I want to say, and they're important enough, I wrote them down. And you can see him reading a big portion of this, and I personally have never seen him do that before. And for that reason, I think because it was more organized than he typically is, it was a pretty darn good speech. And I typically don't like his speeches. It's not so much the content I have a problem with, it's because they're completely rambling and disjointed. And he has a little bit of problem maintaining focus. And he tends to interrupt himself. And by that, I mean he'll be in the middle of a sentence and a word in his sentence distracts him and he'll go off on whatever that word made him think of. He did it today, or did it yesterday at his speech. And he was talking about how Hillary wants to leave, women in bad neighborhoods defenseless. And he said the word woman. And he said, oh, by the way, my poll numbers are improving among women. And then he went and go talk about that for a while. And it took him 5 minutes to come back and talk about his point, which was gun control. But at any rate, my point there is I thought it was a good speech and the best one I've seen from him. And we're going to play several bits of audio. But my question for you, the listening audience, is do you trust Donald Trump with your Second Amendment rights as president? And would you be comfortable supporting him as president, not just as a vote against Hillary, but on what you expect to get in a President Trump? Specifically with respect to the defense of your Second Amendment rights. So we want to take your calls, get your thoughts on those issues. If you're driving back from Louisville and have tuned into WIBC, we'd love to hear about your trip to the N.R.A. annual meeting, what your experience was like down there, and about the topic that I just raised, including if you were at the Trump speech. Would love to hear from you as well. So give us a call, 239-9393, 239-9393. You can contact me on Twitter at Guy Relford or on the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is Gun Guy WIBC. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
He's a Second Amendment attorney. He's an N.R.A. certified firearms instructor. He's the Gun Guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
All right, welcome back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show, and tonight we're talking about the N.R.A. annual meeting, what a lot of people call the annual convention, but the N.R.A. itself calls it the annual meeting. It's in Louisville, and people have to fight the traffic down there a little bit. Louisville's got a lot of construction, both downtown on the interstates going through and to Louisville. In fact, they've shut down some of the bridges, actually replacing some of the bridges. If you haven't been, or at least one, if you haven't been down there, you'll notice that when you go through. But talking about this, we got a whole bunch of people who have called in all at once, and so we want to go right to the phone lines, and we've got Brad. Brad, welcome to the Gun Guy Show. You there, Brad? Or you may,
I am there.
Oh, okay, you still in the car? So I hope you're not. Hope you're using the hands free and you're not distracted here by talking to us at the Gun Guy Show.
Oh, I'm down around Southport, but I got to get to Boone County, and I just attended a 1-hour seminar. I had a lot of questions about, I guess it's HR 218, the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act, the ins and outs of it, and what it means, and I was amazed at how confusing it is, but also how little the guys in my department really knew about it.
Yeah, it's what we call LEOSA, and you mentioned the full name, Law Enforcement Safety Act, and basically what it's meant to do is give law enforcement officers, including retired law enforcement officers, the ability to carry a firearm in all 50 states. The problem is there's been some litigation as to a state's ability essentially to ignore it and still not allow police officers from other states to travel through their state. I think Illinois is one, at least historically, and I can't say that I've seen anything about this recently, but Illinois was sort of resisting that for some time. Illinois was saying publicly for years that they didn't care if you didn't have an Illinois if you couldn't carry legally in Illinois and you were not an Illinois officer, including back when they didn't even issue licenses to carry or concealed carry permits, as they call them over there, that you, even as a police officer from another state, you couldn't carry there. And there was some litigation, I think, involving some prosecutions that they tried to go forward with. And I can't tell you the outcome of any of those, Brad, but as you know, the general purpose of LEOSA is just what it sounds like. It's to allow police officers to carry handguns through other states legally.
there was one case cited which would be good for most officers to know. They arrested someone who claimed that he was protected under a LEOSA in San Francisco. The man spent a night in jail, got a lawyer, they let him out, dropped all the charges. He was not satisfied. They went after them, and I believe they settled. The San Francisco authorities had to pay, I think, $43,000 for that false arrest.
Yeah, I did hear something about that, and the good thing there is one of the things that you can sue a city over, or a municipality, in terms of the conduct of their police officers, is false arrest. So yeah, and Brad, we're glad you called. Drive safely as you're coming up 65. We're glad you went to the annual meeting. And give me a call at the office. If you have additional questions about LEOSA, it'd be good to have the statute in front of me, and we can very quickly pull up other cases or prosecutions or criminal cases involving that. We'd love to talk about that as well. So let's go back to the phone lines, and we've got Paul. Paul, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, Guy, how are you today?
Good, buddy. What do you got for us tonight?
Well, appreciate your show. Always enjoy it when I can catch it on Saturday. I'm just wanting to say that I fully support Mr. Trump and his candidacy, and I think he's going to be our next president. I know that he's had position changes as to addressing issues over the years. I think one of the things as to his gun background and his comments, he's typically in New York City. He's typically done a lot of business in New York City. He's had to ingratiate himself with the politicians there. And some of his public comments or positions in the past may, and I don't know for sure, but may have something to do with that. I think that he is who he says he is today, and that's a guy who's thankful for all that he's been given in America, all that his family was able to do, and that he wants to give back. I really see him as that. It's going to be the biggest, I really see him that way. So, and the backside, just let me throw it out there, some other people probably already think this, but the Democrats really don't have a candidate, in as much as we know who Hillary is.
Yeah.
And I think she's viable. So I'm hoping for Mr. Trump, thankful that he spoke at the N.R.A. meeting, and, looking forward to having him. We're watching something new.
Yeah, we are.
And I think that, there's trepidation there because we don't know the outcome yet. There has been trepidation. And, a lot of thoughts over all the positions and stuff over time. I really do think that we are watching something new, but it's going to be good. I think there's opportunity here. And, I'm thankful for that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth, guy. Thank you.
All right, Paul, buddy. Thank you for calling the Gun Guy Show, and I think you speak for a lot of people in knowing with absolutely all certainty what we get in Hillary Clinton, and seeing Donald Trump as certainly a preferable alternative. Let's go right back to the phone lines, and we've got Chris. Chris, welcome to the Gun Guy Show, buddy. What do you got for us? Or I shouldn't assume buddy, but Chris, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I guessed right. I'm glad you're not Christina.
No.
What do you got for us?
I'm getting ready to go on vacation to see my daughter. She lives in Kansas, and in the course of in order to do so, I have to go through Illinois.
Yep.
If I put my handgun in a safe and put it in my trunk and put the ammo, in a different compartment in the interior of the car, am I legal to go through Illinois? Yeah.
First of all, Illinois has changed its own laws, and my friend Kirk keeps educating me on this, and I think because it's Illinois, I repress it and can never remember the specifics. But Illinois has changed its own rules, where I think you can actually have a gun in your car, unloaded, and travel through Illinois legally under under Illinois' laws. But separately. And by the way, I've never checked that. I've never read that. But one thing you can rely on to get through Illinois are what they call the safe passage provisions of the Firearms Owners Protection Act of 1986. And what those say is basically, as you just described it, Chris, is if you have a gun that's unloaded, that's and in a locked container is even better, but if it's in the trunk, separate, and inaccessible, and the statute says not directly accessible or readily accessible from the passenger compartment, then it's unloaded, then and in a secure case, then you're legal. And it'd be worthwhile just Googling Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986 and just double check exactly what those requirements are. But I'm pretty sure we just nailed them pretty accurately in terms terms of unloaded, inaccessible from the passenger compartment, separate from any ammunition, and in a locked case is gonna do you well to get through Illinois. But I would recommend just pulling up FOPA, Firearm Owners Protection Act, 1986, and that'll tell you exactly what those conditions are. All right, look, I'll tell you what, we're going to take one more phone call before we go to a break, and we've got Gary. Gary, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
I'm retired civil service and moved back to Indiana, and I have a security company I do, and I am licensed.
Uh-huh.
However, my nephew, who had previous felonies, but they're Class A misdemeanors now, and when he went to purchase a firearm, they wanted him to buy the firearm first, then run the background.
They wanted to run his credit card or whatever?
Yeah,
uh-huh.
Yes, and he didn't feel comfortable with that, and but they wouldn't do the background at all. But however, the one felony did get sent through to where it is now a Class A misdemeanor, and that was like from 12 years ago.
Uh-huh.
But it's like a theft and an invasion of privacy on the two things he has. Now, will that keep him from being able to obtain a concealed carry license in Indiana?
Yeah, and Gary, thanks for your call. Yeah, we call them licenses to carry handguns in Indiana, and if a felony has been reduced, we have a system in Indiana like exists in a lot of states, which is called alternative misdemeanor sentencing. And you can actually get a felony reduced to and sentenced as a misdemeanor. And an AMS, or alternative misdemeanor sentencing, reduction of a felony to a misdemeanor, does then establish that as a non-disqualifier under the statute that defines who can and cannot get a license to carry a handgun in Indiana, because it doesn't say felony or a misdemeanor in the statute. What it says is a conviction for a crime for which you could have been sentenced to more than a year. Well, generally, that's what separates misdemeanors and felonies. A crime for which you could have been sentenced to more than a year, that's what a felony is. However, as soon as the conviction is reduced under alternative misdemeanor sentencing to an A misdemeanor and it's sentenced as an A misdemeanor, then you can't be sentenced to more than a year and you don't meet the requirement for the disqualification under the statute. But that's maybe more complicated than I needed to make it, because essentially if you get a felony reduced to a misdemeanor, and you can do that after the fact. I mean, I've had people contact my office and years after a felony conviction, seek to go back under the AMS guidelines in Indiana and have a felony conviction reduced. And there are legal requirements you have to meet in order to make that happen, but you can do that. And that should restore your or your cousin's ability to both buy a gun and to get a license to carry a handgun in Indiana. All right, well, I'll tell you what, we're a little past the bottom of the hour, so we're going to take a break. We're going to continue to take your calls. We've got a couple people on hold, so we'll get to you right after the break. We're talking about the N.R.A. annual meeting. We're talking about N.R.A. endorsing Donald Trump for president. And we want to get your take. And by the way, if you went to the convention or the annual meeting and just want to talk about your experience down there, I went to the legal seminar, but wasn't able to go to the actual exposition center to go to the all the booths and everything. And I've got a lot of friends down there, a lot of people I know well, and so I'm kind of missing out a little bit. But if you're down there or you're on your way back or you went yesterday, give us a call. We'd love for you to share your experiences with us. Give us a call, 239-9393, or contact me on Twitter at Guy Relford, or contact me on the Gun Guy Facebook page, just Gun Guy WIBC. So give us a call, contact us on the internet, and we'd love to have you involved in the conversation. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Now you've got a gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford, and this is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. We're talking generally about the N.R.A. annual meeting in Louisville going on right now. Started yesterday morning. I was down there for the National Annual Firearms Law Conference. And but the N.R.A. ILA stands for Institute for Legislative Action, sort of the political wing of N.R.A., had a big meeting as well. They endorsed Donald Trump for president. Donald spoke for 32 minutes. And I'm going to be playing some audio about that. here in a bit. But in the meantime, we're also taking your calls. And so we want to go to the phone lines. We've got Mike. Mike, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Yes, nice to speak with you.
Yes, sir.
See, my question basically is with what I consider to be the fear-mongering going on with Hillary currently. Whatever happened to this, I've heard about for 7 years that Obama's going to take my guns away. How's that working out for Mr. Obama?
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, and there are a whole bunch of veterans right now who get VA benefits who have had Obama specifically take their guns away. You know how? Because they went in and got diagnosed with PTSD. They're trying to get treatment for an ailment that they incurred defending their country, and as a result of that, because they got diagnosed with a mental disorder with absolutely no due process whatsoever, the Obama administration has taken their Second Amendment rights away and sent them letters saying they're not entitled to possess a gun. And the same thing is happening right now with Social Security recipients, that if you appoint a fiduciary to receive your Social Security benefits for you, the Obama administration has said very specifically that you must be mentally incompetent to possess a gun and you've lost your Second Amendment rights. And they're telling those people they can't own a gun. And in fact, Rand Paul has introduced legislation in Congress to require both the Veterans Administration and the Social Security Administration to go through some form of due process to not strip these people of their gun rights, to take their guns from them just through some bureaucrat sitting behind a computer screen somewhere looking at third-hand data, deciding that some people shouldn't have guns. We've also had both Obama and Hillary come out and say one thing we should look at and one thing we should propose in this country is something along the lines of what Australia did, or something along the lines of what Great Britain did. And anytime you hear a desire to move toward Australia, do you know what we're talking about? We're talking about confiscation. Now, that's never going to happen in this country. It's not going to happen because it'll never get through Congress. But don't think for a minute, if Hillary and Obama had their way, a lot of people, in addition to veterans and elderly people receiving Social Security benefits, that other people wouldn't also lose their gun rights. We have currently pending in Congress right now, specifically supported by President Obama and endorsed specifically by Hillary Clinton, an assault weapons ban, which would ban an incredibly huge category of semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines. They want to ban them. You know what a ban is, Mike? That's people losing their gun rights. So the fact that Obama hasn't been successful in doing what he'd want to, he came out the other day and said the most frustrating thing of his presidency is that he hasn't been able to do more to strip gun rights away. What he said, to do more on gun control or to pass common sense gun legislation. What do you think Obama really means when he says common sense gun legislation? It's affecting the rights of law-abiding gun owners. So, Grandpa Relford had a saying way back when of just because you're paranoid don't mean they ain't out to get you. But I don't think anybody who's concerned about Obama and a potential President Clinton, Hillary Clinton, restricting our gun rights can be called legitimately paranoid, because they've come out and said they want to restrict our gun rights. That being the case, I have to disagree with my friend when you talk about fear-mongering or paranoia. Now, they're out to get us. It's not paranoid to know it. All right, we're going to take a break. We're at the quarter hour. We got several people on hold. We're going to get to all of you after the break, so stick around. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Your rights, your responsibilities, your guns. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. We're talking about the annual meeting of N.R.A., the fact that N.R.A. has now endorsed Donald Trump for president. And as always, we're taking your calls. So we always want to take your calls on whatever topic you'd like to address. If you want to talk about whether you trust Donald Trump with your Second Amendment rights, whether you agree with NRA's endorsement of him. We just had Mike who called in who I think had a little disagreement with some of my comments about Hillary or about Obama. And we always want to welcome opposing views as well. I mean, if I disagree, you know me, I'm going to say I disagree. But that doesn't mean that we don't want a dissenting voice or a contrary opinion being voiced here on the Gun Guy Show. We absolutely welcome those as well. And Mike, we were glad you called the show. But for right now, let's go back to the phone lines. And we've got, let's see, Brad's been holding the longest. Brad, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, Guy. Great show as always, and always look forward to listening to it when I'm in town. And you're
Good.
Such a great diplomat. I think if I had taken Mike's call, it probably would have been a little different discussion. But
well,
anyway,
I wasn't gentle.
Yeah, but we went down yesterday, and I think probably some of the observations that I came away with were that. They just always, the first time I ever went was in 2014, and of course Indianapolis put on a tremendous show then even.
Yeah.
And it was really good down in Louisville, but the first thing you noticed was the amount of security. I mean, there was, Secret Service and TSA, and there were a few people on the roof, and I'm sure they had something very accurate to use if they needed it, that kind of thing. And so it took about 2+ hours, I think, for the whole group to get into Freedom Hall. And that maybe with Trump being a little bit late, it kind of delayed things. But everybody stayed, and everybody was really interested in seeing what Trump was going to say, I think. And probably I think he was the third speaker. Maybe Chris went first, and I think Wayne LaPierre went second, and then finally Trump came in. Uh-huh. And what I would say, maybe the initial... the place was packed. And people might disagree with me, but I think the initial welcome that he got was somewhere between tepid and warm, maybe lukewarm. Uh-huh. And I think by the time he was finished, I don't think there was a person in the House that thought anything but that this is the person who we're going to go with. This is the person who we can absolutely, most definitely trust with our Second Amendment rights, and he's going to be the one that's going to get it done.
I watched the entire video. It was 32 minutes and a few seconds. And in fact, I'm going to play some audio in the second hour. And I got to tell you, as I said at the top of the show, I've been a little cynical about Mr. Trump. And I mean, even since he announced, I always had a different opinion of how he did in the debates compared to what the polls said after each debate. I would watch a debate and go, oh my gosh, he didn't do well at all, in much stronger language than that. And then the polls would indicate that 60% of people thought he won the debate, and his numbers go up 5%. So I was clearly at odds with the vast majority of people watching those debates. But I bought it yesterday. It was the best speech I've seen or heard him give. It was, even though a little disjointed because he distracts himself from time to time, it was the most cogent and organized speech I've seen him give, and I bought it. I thought it was credible.
Yeah, I firmly agree with you. I think you're spot on with what happened inside there too. And in each one of those speakers, I'm sure you're probably there here in 2014, but each one of those speakers that they lined up hit home. Their own sort of version of what's happening, but every one, who do we have? Rand Paul and both the governors, and Katie Pavlich, and probably in fact the guy that they put on last, they should have put on maybe first, was Sheriff David Clark. But every single one of these people said, "Look, listen, you've got to jump it up and down. This is very, very vital." That if you don't want to vote for Trump, you've got to vote against Hillary, and there's only one way to do it.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say the single issue that would warrant a vote for Trump is simply to vote against Hillary appointing the next 1, 2, 3, as many as 5 Supreme Court justices. That is a scary, scary, scary proposition. And so thanks, Brad, so much for calling the show. We appreciate it. I think you got a great perspective. And I got to tell you, with that list of speakers, I would absolutely have loved to have been in the room. Like I said, I was attending the legal seminar, which I want to go to every year. Every time I've had the opportunity, I've been to I think 3 years in a row now, and I missed a couple of years and went before then. I started going to it probably close to 20 years ago. The first one I went to was in Chicago. And that's really important information for what I do for a living. And there are really good speakers and a lot of good legal education. But I got to tell you, when I saw the lineup of speakers going on at the N.R.A. ILA meeting, and not just Trump, but a whole bunch of other folks as well, I was really regretting the fact that I couldn't see all that. The good news is they've now invented this whole internet thing. And I can go back and watch the videos. And we'll be talking specifically about Trump's speech. And I'll give you some snippets here and there. And you'll be able to hear for yourself some of the points he made. And I think they were the most important points. I think not allowing Hillary to appoint the next several Supreme Court justices, given the age of some of these folks, not just the open seat we have after Scalia's death, is just one point. But there are several others, and we'll address those as well, including gun-free zones. That is, now we're coming to the top of the hour, and so we need to take a break. We got a couple of people on hold, so don't go away. Join the discussion. We're going to continue it after the break. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is The Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford. This is The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. I'm talking about the N.R.A. annual meeting going on in Louisville right now. And by the way, I got to tell you, having been to that annual meeting, and I went last year in Nashville, Tennessee, and then the year before, it was here in Indy. And man, you hear this a lot about how well designed Indianapolis is for a big convention or a large sporting event, whether it's the Final Four of the NCAA or the Super Bowl. And I got to tell you, every time I go to a large event, whether it's a big sporting event or I think even more challenging is a large convention where you just get huge groups of people that come in. Every time I go to one, the more proud I am of Indianapolis, because I'll tell you what, we are set up and organized so well. You can walk about everywhere. We think we have traffic issues. We don't have traffic issues, relatively speaking. I got to tell you, going to Louisville, and I like Louisville generally, and it's a good city to visit, but man, it was a struggle going down there yesterday. There's a lot of construction. I mean, hey, construction happens, but trying to get in and out of there, to fight the traffic, and then everything's spread out. You've got the Yum Center, where it's more of an athletic venue, a sports venue that's some miles away from the convention center. Certainly not walkable. You got to get in your car and drive and park. Parking was a struggle. I talked to people who, looked for parking for like half hour, 40 minutes at one point. Folks who were trying to get to particular events, like I saw posted, one lady was trying to get to the Well-Armed Woman meet and greet and was stuck in traffic for close to an hour trying to get to her event and was very concerned she was just going to miss it altogether. So I'm not criticizing N.R.A. in any way, shape, or form. I think Louisville is a perfectly fine city to host an event like that. My point really is to praise Indianapolis because, man, you come down, there's lots of parking. You park one place and then walk everywhere. And for a spring event like this, I understand now why some groups, whether it's Gen Con and now N.R.A. is coming back. I think it's in another 3 years, if I'm right. They want to come back. We are set up to host an event like that. And as much as I enjoyed being down there yesterday, I would have preferred to be right here, even if I was traveling in from somewhere else. This wasn't my hometown. So anyway, pats on the back to the folks in Indianapolis who organize those kinds of events, because we do them extremely well. All right, we're going to go back to the phone lines and talk about either the convention or anything else you want to talk about. And let's see, we've got Ken. Ken, you've been on the phone for quite a while, buddy, on hold. So welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Is that me? Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to you, my friend. You are live and on the air.
Oh, it's good talking to you, Guy.
Thank you, sir. You too.
I enjoy your show.
I'm glad you do.
And I just want to echo what you just said. It took me forever to get to the show yesterday.
Yeah.
And 3 times as long to get out. It took me 4 hours to get back to Indy.
Oh, no. To travel 120 miles.
Yes, absolutely. It was just horrendous. And most of that time was between the convention center and the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, going down there, I left here at dark 30 yesterday morning because I didn't go down the night before and to spend the night. I decided I'd just get up early. And I got fairly lucky getting across the bridge. I got diverted off of 65 early, and I gotta give my navigation system on my Verizon phone some kudos because it got me off the interstate early enough that I went over an alternative bridge. So I kind of cruised right in there on the way in. It wasn't nearly as easy to get out.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of people who just sat in traffic, including on 65.
Well, I went down there last time. It was 4 years ago, I guess, in Louisville, and it was fine that year. Indy was better, and if they ever have it again in Louisville, I'll have to think twice about going because it was just the traffic.
Yeah.
Once you got in the show, everything was good.
Yeah. Did you go to the Trump speech and the N.R.A. ILA?
I just stuck to the vendors in the show.
Okay. How was that? How was that set up? Was it as good as it's been in years past?
It was. Everybody and anybody was there.
Yep.
Some of the vendors had the same comments, though, about everything being spread out and hard to get to.
Yeah.
The one thing I was impressed inside and not so much inside. I think everybody and his brother now has an AR platform.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, because they're selling a lot of them.
Yeah. And I don't understand how they can possibly try and get rid of that because it's so popular and so common now.
Yeah, well, good point, Ken. And I'm glad you called. Glad you enjoyed the convention, notwithstanding some of the frustrations with logistics and travel down there. But hey, on the AR side, there are so many of them in civilian hands right now, and even the most ardent gun control supporter shivers at the idea of any kind of a seizure. Because there are just too many, and there are far too many people who feel strongly enough about their gun rights that nobody wants to go door to door and start taking people's rifles away from them. And I don't expect to see that in my lifetime, and I would really cringe, as I'm sure law enforcement officials would and politicians would, at what would happen if we ever got to that point. I don't see that happening. But all right, let's go right back to the phone lines, and we've got George. George, welcome to the Gun Guy Show, buddy.
Hi.
How are you?
George, I live in western Hancock County. There's a lot of construction going on out here.
Uh-huh.
And we have a coyote problem because of all the
it's kind of pushing them out of their normal areas
and moving them out of their environment.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Well, I have a couple of small dogs. We have now coyotes coming up in my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if it would be legal for me to take a shotgun out and take a couple of shots at them to scare them off. I do not have a carry permit, but,
Are you in the city limits, George?
Far enough away from any occupied residents to not really bother anybody.
Are you in the city? Are you in the city limits?
No, I am not. I'm in Buck Creek.
Okay. Well, a couple of things. First of all, if you're just trying to scare them away, there are a lot of ways to make noise. I mean, you can go buy one of these little condensed gas horns that people use at sporting events and whatnot that are really annoying, but that are really loud. They're little miniature sirens that just use some kind of compressed gas or air.
Okay.
And that way you don't have to worry about those projectiles coming down somewhere. You don't have to have the secondary, reaction that some people have to hearing gunshots. So if you just want to make noise, and that, you go out there and bang on a pot and pan, you're probably going to scare them away. Just so you know what DNR says and what the law is here in Indiana, coyotes are considered a nuisance animal. And that means that you can hunt them. The word DNR always uses is take, meaning kill them. But you can, if you're the landowner, and actually exactly, let me just pull it up. What DNR says is landowners or a person with written permission from a landowner may take coyotes year-round on private property by snaring, trapping, or shooting without a permit from DNR. A landowner does not need a permit to take coyotes on his or her property by one of these methods, but a hunting or trapping license is required to hunt or trap coyotes on land other than your own. So you can shoot them. Now, what I always tell people is you got to worry about a couple of things. If there are people or occupied structures anywhere around you and you start firing shots, I have personally defended clients who got charged with criminal recklessness for shooting a gun around where other people are or around where occupied structures are. Some of those were completely inappropriate. They should never have been prosecuted because there was no one that you could identify that was in any way endangered by the action that was taken. Some of them, you could argue were a little more questionable. But you don't want to do anything that could potentially danger another person, or you've got to worry about a criminal recklessness charge. That's the charge that most prosecutors will levy. Will file if somebody's shooting a gun at a place where they don't think they should be shooting guns. The other, as we covered, is there are ordinances in a lot of places that say you can't discharge a firearm within city limits, so you got to worry about those as well. All right, let's take one more call before we take a break, and we're going to go to Bob. Bob, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, I appreciate it. I'll make it quick.
Sure.
Hey, I just want to bring up if you could talk about the Brady bill and what was in that. And that was back in the 80s, and I think Ronald Reagan or Bush signed that into law. That's a gun control law. And also, we need to worry about the mayors and the governors of states like Chicago, where they got the toughest gun laws in the country. And I think New York, you can't even have a handgun. And that's what we need to worry about, not the president. And also, Donald Trump, just a few years ago, he's on video saying that he's all for assault weapons bans, and he's all for an extended background waiting period.
Yeah, and Bob, I actually went back before the show, and thanks for calling. Before the show tonight, I actually went back and pulled those quotes up because I wanted them fresh in my mind before we talked about them on the show tonight. And he did talk about the previous assault weapons ban that was in effect from 94 to 2004, and he said he supported it. And at the time too, and this actually predates that ban. It's a different quote. He talked about he didn't think that a background check was too much of a burden. He said you got to be able to find out whether somebody's been committed of a crime within 72 hours. That is such an outdated quote. Because NICS, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, run by the FBI out of West Virginia, they very often complete those checks in as little as 60 seconds. After a FFL, a federal firearms licensee, a gun shop calls them, and unless they have a backlog, if they got examiners available, they pull up a person's record and they respond immediately. So some of the things that Trump said, I'm not trying to apologize for the guy. I was not a real big fan when he first announced he was running for president. And there were other candidates on the Republican side that I preferred. But those quotes don't cause me a lot of concern right now because, one, just to talk about an assault weapons ban that was already in place at a time when he probably didn't understand near as much as he understands today about what really is covered by a quote-unquote assault weapons ban, that these are commonly owned modern sporting rifles or personal defense rifles that civilians absolutely ought to be entitled to own. And I think he probably knows a hell of a lot more about that now than he did then. And the background check thing, that doesn't bother me. I mean, somebody said, "Guy, do you support background checks?" I say, yeah, I don't think you should be able to go to a gun store and buy a gun without a background check. I have no problem with the idea of a background check. I don't like the way NICS operates sometimes. I don't like the fact that they're not even processing appeals from denials on NICS right now. And I don't like the fact that you can't file an action in court to challenge the FBI and NICS once they've stuck to a denial after their appeal process. Every other decision of administrative agency in this country you can challenge in court with what's called a petition for judicial review of administrative ruling. But you can't do that for a lot of really complicated reasons with respect to a NICS denial. That's wrong. But the general idea of a background check by FFLs as a requirement for them to sell guns, I don't have a problem with that. Why? Because I don't want felons getting guns. I don't want people convicted of domestic battery getting guns. I don't have a problem with those requirements. I don't have effect with background checks. What I do have a problem with is universal background checks for a couple of reasons. It's a complete unnecessary burden on a lot of transactions, like among family members. You want to transfer a gun to a grandson, and you want to buy or give a grandson his first cricket rifle, and what, you got to trundle down to the FFL and do a background check. But more importantly even than that is it is impossible to have a universal system of background checks without universal registration. If you don't know what everybody owns, if you don't know who owns what, how do you ever prove that someone transferred a gun to another person without a background check? You can't. And that's why they can require background checks for FFLs, because there's already a system for tracking every single gun that leaves the manufacturer, goes through a retailer, and then goes to an FFL, a federal firearms licensee. They have to absolutely keep track of every single gun that comes through and identify that they only sold it with a background check. And I don't have any problem with how that system works. So the idea of, do we support background checks? If Donald Trump at some point said he supports background checks, does that cause me concern today? Nah, not a bit. All right, I'll tell you what, we're a little past the break, as we tend to be, but we're going to take a break. We want to continue to take your calls. Had some great calls, some great input, and we want to continue to take those. So give us a call, join the discussion. Were you at the annual meeting? Were you at the convention? What did you think of the meeting? Were you at Donald Trump's speech? I keep saying we're going to do this. We are going to do this. We're going to play some audio so you could hear, if you didn't get to hear it, get to catch some of the highlights. But join the discussion, 239-9393. That's 239-9393. Contact me on Facebook, on the Gun Guy Facebook page, Gun Guy WIBC, or contact me on Twitter at Guy Relford. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
I got no begging town, I got no pension plan, I make a minimum wage.
The show about gun rights, gun safety, and responsible gun ownership. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show. We're talking Donald Trump, talking N.R.A. annual meeting, talking about the fact that N.R.A. has now endorsed Donald Trump for president, and we're asking the question, do you trust a President Trump to protect, defend, and support your Second Amendment rights? And as a couple of people have pointed out, and as I pointed out at the top of the show, Donald has said some things historically that would cause you a little concern. He supported an assault weapons ban. And I always want to do air quotes when I use the word assault weapons. You can't see those over the radio, but the so-called assault weapons ban, that simply a ban on semi-automatic rifles that look scary, which has always been completely silly in my mind. But Donald did say he supported that. He did say he supported background checks, although this was back at a time when we didn't have the system that's in place today that makes a background check that you do at a gun shop, at a federal firearms licensee, really pretty darn easy. Sometimes you get delays, sometimes they're overwhelmed, sometimes you don't get a decision, you don't get to leave with your gun. But in my experience, that's becoming fewer and farther between, because I think their system has improved over the years. But I'll tell you what, let's do. Again, forecasting this, we've got some audio from the speech that Donald gave yesterday. And, I think it was Mike who called in and said, there's a lot of fear mongering here in terms of what Hillary or Clinton would like to do. And I got to tell you, on that point, only like a minute and 30 seconds into his speech, Trump came out swinging at exactly that issue.
To a little detail, but I will tell you that Hillary Clinton, and I call her Crooked Hillary because all you have to do is read any newspaper you want. But Hillary Clinton wants to abolish the Second Amendment. Just remember that. We're not talking about change it. She wants to abolish the Second Amendment. So we're not going to let that happen. I can tell you that right now. We're going to preserve it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to take care of it. Okay?
And you know what? Is that fear-mongering? I don't think so. Because Hillary has come out specifically and said that the Supreme Court got it wrong in Heller versus D.C. What did Heller versus D.C. say? Heller versus D.C. was a 2008 decision that said for the very first time that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to bear arms. That you don't have to be in the militia to have a right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment. Because keep in mind, how's the Second Amendment start out? A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so the District of Columbia, and in fact, 4 judges of the Supreme Court, all made the argument that unless you're in the militia, you don't have a right to keep and bear arms. Hillary Clinton has said specifically that the Supreme Court got it wrong, that the majority In the opinion written by now unfortunately deceased Justice Scalia, the majority that said no in 1791 when the Second Amendment was ratified, everybody was the militia. The whole of the people, to use George Washington's words, was the militia. We're not talking about a necessarily a state-sponsored, a government-sponsored militia like the National Guard today. We were talking about everybody. That was the militia in 1791. Hillary Clinton has said Scalia and the other four justices who sided in the 5-4 decision in Heller were wrong, and that she would appoint a justice. And again, make no mistake, the gentleman just recently nominated, not appointed, he gets to nominate, and only with the advice and consent of Senate does he get appointed. The guy who just nominated was the person who wrote the underlying opinion in Heller that was reversed by the Supreme Court that says there's no individual right to keep and bear arms. If we have a Supreme Court, as Hillary wants, that says there's no individual right to keep and bear arms, what have we done? We've abolished the Second Amendment as it's currently interpreted and as it's currently in place, protecting people's gun rights because of the Heller decision. So abolish the Second Amendment? I don't know. If Hillary had her choice, would she go to a convention of states, or would she get a proposal through with a two-thirds majority through both houses that would repeal the Second Amendment as it currently exists? Would Hillary propose? Would she support that? The only reason she wouldn't support it is because she didn't think she could get it done. If she thought she could get it done, do you hesitate for a moment to say that Hillary wouldn't love that? I don't think that's an overstatement. I don't think that's fear-mongering. I don't even think it's inaccurate. I think it's dead on. But in addition to talking about Hillary's stance on the Second Amendment, Trump went through a discussion. He first talked about Paris. He also talked about San Bernardino, but not just from the perspective that we hear a lot, which is we need to do a better job of keeping terrorists out of the country, that we need to cut down, for instance, as was clearly and continues to be a problem in Europe with radicalized Islamic jihadists coming into Europe and committing heinous acts, where there's Charlie Hebdo or the Paris coordinated attacks. Not just that we need to do a better job in terms of counterterrorism, but he also talked about how when you have extreme forms of gun control in a country or in a city like Paris, how that inhibits the ability of people to defend themselves. And video or audio segment number 2 discusses that issue.
So often we talk about Paris or we talk about San Bernardino, and nobody had guns. Paris is probably in the world the toughest place to have a gun. The toughest. France generally, but Paris in particular. But if you look at Paris, 130 people killed, hundreds of people still in the hospital, just horribly wounded, can never be the same, horribly wounded. And these guys came in, boom, boom, you over here, boom, and they just stood there and just shot everybody. No guns on the other side, folks. If you would have had guns on the other side, if I took a couple of these folks in here, some especially wearing the red caps, Make America Great Again, I promise there wouldn't have been 130 people killed and hundreds of people lying in the hospital to this day. It might not have happened, because if they knew there were guns in the room, it might not have happened. But if it did, you would have had bullets going in the opposite direction, and believe me, the carnage would not have been the same by any stretch of the imagination.
And how can we say, as gun owners in this country, where our right to keep and bear arms is protected, where we can carry handguns on our persons, we can get, depending on your state, a license to carry handgun or a concealed carry permit, and you can have the capacity to defend yourself, not just against the ordinary everyday criminal, but against somebody who comes into a theater or a bakery or a restaurant or a newspaper and wants to murder you in the name of radical Islam. And that's a fair point. And not everybody approaches Paris or Brussels or San Bernardino from that perspective of, hey, you know what? Do we need to do a better job of counterterrorism? Sure. Do we also need to give people the individual ability to defend themselves against those radical jihadists? Absolutely. And I, for one, was extremely pleased to hear Trump approach the issue from that perspective, because that's how a lot of us go through life. Not wanting not only the equipment, but the training and the mindset to be able to defend ourselves and our families when we're out in public from whomever would want to hurt us. So, all right, join the discussion. We've got a couple people on hold. We'll absolutely get to you here after this break, but join the discussion, 239-9393. That's 239-9393. Contact me on Twitter. We had a couple comments on Twitter that I want to mention about the annual meeting in Louisville, or the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is Gun Guy WIBC. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is the Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford. This is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. And I'll tell you what, we've got several people on hold. We're going to go right to the phone lines. We have people been holding for quite a while. Let's go to Rodney. Rodney, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Yeah, hi, Guy. Hey,
buddy.
My question was like 6 months ago, I purchased a handgun and I got approved for it.
Uh-huh.
And then here it's been about 3 weeks ago, I tried to buy a lower receiver for an AR, and I got denied. And I just heard you say that, give me a little card to do this appeal process thing, but I was listening to your show there, and I heard you say that, they weren't even, wasting your time with even looking at those or doing anything. Should I go ahead and appeal it? Or?
Yeah, Rodney, I would. And the reason I say that, the reason I said that it's really a frustrating process right now is that the FBI has said, and the FBI is who runs NICS, National Instant Criminal Background Check System, that they're so overwhelmed that they're not processing NICS appeals right now. In other words, denials when you go to try to buy a gun. Because they're just so overwhelmed, they're just letting them pile up. Now, if they're really that overwhelmed, or whether this is just a move by the Obama administration to poke their finger in gun owners' eyes, I couldn't tell you. But what I've been telling people on this issue, Rodney, is to go ahead and get in the queue. I mean, go ahead and I'd do the appeal, because one of two things I got to believe is going to happen. They're going to get caught up and start processing appeals, so that it may take forever. And it's a slow process anyway. Even when they were processing them, it can take months for them to consider an appeal. But hey, if you get a reversal eventually, that's better than none at all. The other is, hopefully, we're going to have a Republican president that's going to fix some of this ridiculous crap. In other words, to put more resources into those appeals and to fix the problem of not being able to get satisfaction or get relief in the form of a successful challenge to a wrongful denial of your attempt to purchase a firearm. So I would go ahead and send in the appeal, even though they're not processing them. You're not going to get a resolution anytime soon, but that's better than not doing it at all. All right, back to the phone lines. Fred, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, Guy. I heard you asking for comments on the convention.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Well, once I got inside, it was great. But yesterday morning, I know you mentioned about the traffic. We sat within sight of the expo hall, watching people fill up the parking lot from 10:15 until 12:40 when we finally got inside.
Oh, my goodness.
And we were at exit 131B, and it off of, is that 264 or 65 there?
Yeah.
Right by the convention center. It was just so frustrating.
Yeah, and it's a shame, and I don't know, and thanks for calling, Fred. I don't know when N.R.A. made the decision to have it there, that they were told, because, obviously they make those commitments years in advance, what the level of construction was going to be, or, what the potential congestion problems would be. Because, by the way, the exposition hall is sort of removed from all the bridge construction and the stuff going on right there at the river. And I wasn't able to go down there yesterday when I was in Louisville for the seminar that I attended, but I don't know if it was if the construction even had anything to do with it, or it's just the inability on those city streets to handle the kind of traffic. But it was a shame because I know it detracted from a lot of people's experience down there. All right, back to the phone lines. Bob, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Well, I sure appreciate it. I'll make it real quick.
Sure.
Hey, I hate to say this, but I agree with Trump on this issue of people being allowed to carry guns anywhere they want to protect themselves.
Yeah, I'm going to play some more audio on his comments on that.
Okay, I'm all for that, and I'm a Democrat. I hate to admit that, but I am.
It's all right. Nobody's perfect. We still love you, Bob.
Yeah, but I just don't want anybody to think that all Democrats are anti-gun. I'm not.
Fair enough.
I'm all for no gun-free zones, because that's how all these shootings happen.
Yeah.
Is because nobody in the room has a gun. Okay, I got a challenge for Donald, and get it to him, please, over the internet, because I don't have the internet. Next time he has a rally, let everybody that goes to that rally carry an AR-15 and a 30-round clip handgun on them, and let's see how big his balls are.
Yeah, fair enough, Bob. Well, first of all, however Trump might feel about that, he's not going to have that option because the Secret Service isn't going to allow that. In fact, the Secret Service, I believe, takes the position that anywhere they are performing their job as Secret Service protecting presidents, their families, or candidates, that converts that immediate area or that building into a federal facility, quote unquote, and you cannot carry a gun in a federal facility. Now, whether that truly meets the definition of a federal facility as defined by statute is open to question, because that statute talks about where federal employees are regularly present in the performance of their job responsibility, not temporarily, or not for the afternoon, or not for a particular speech. So whether they're right legally on that, I don't know, but I guarantee you they don't care, because they take the position that where they're doing their job protecting candidates or politicians, whoever it might be, that you can't have a gun there, and they'll go down swinging. I don't mean literally, but I mean legally on that issue, because they're not going to feel good about the ability to protect the person they're trying to protect if people are walking around with long guns with loaded magazines. But I get your point. I get your point. In other words, have the courage of your convictions. But on the issue, and Bob just raised this, of gun-free zones, the next audio we have is where candidate Trump talked about that a little bit, not just San Bernardino, but also on military bases.
You have San Bernardino, 14 people. They worked with these two. They worked with them. They gave them a baby shower. They had a baby. The people they worked with gave them a baby shower. They walked in, no guns on the other side. They had the guns, and they killed 14 people, many wounded, many in the hospital to this day, but they wounded many. But they killed 14 of their co-workers, and the co-workers thought they were friends. So there's something going on. Now, I tell you again, same story. If we had guns on the other side, it wouldn't have been that way. I would have, boom. If we had guns on the other side, it wouldn't have been that way. And then you have the gun-free zones. The gun-free zones, that's real. We had a case, about a year and a half ago was the first I really heard of this, and where you had the 5 military people, great people. One was a master marksman, a master with anything he touched having to do with guns, weapons, anything he touched. And they were told, this is on a military base, folks, on a military base. They were told, put your guns away, got to put your guns. These are, soldiers. These are people that are representing us. These are the top of the line. These were 5 great, brave, incredible soldiers. Put your guns away. So their guns are locked up, put in a different area of the place. And this whack job walks in and starts shooting them, killed all 5 of them. Gun-free zones. We're getting rid of gun-free zones, okay? I can tell you.
So there you have it. Donald Trump on gun-free zones, as well as preserving an individual's right to carry a personal firearm for personal defense. All right, we're going to take another break. Give us a call if you want to join the discussion, 239-9393. Contact me on Twitter at Guy Relford, or on Facebook at Gun Guy WIBC. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
N.R.A. certified firearms instructor. He's the Gun Guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. And we're talking about Donald Trump and his endorsement that he received from the N.R.A. yesterday at the N.R.A. annual meeting. And this next topic we're going to discuss, and I'm going to play some more audio from his speech. Frankly, this would be enough for me to be a single issue voter in the next election. And that is, however I felt about Donald Trump on almost any other issue, in this election, I would cast my vote for him simply as a means of attempting to prevent Hillary Clinton from appointing the vacant seat we have for Supreme Court Justice right now after the unexpected, untimely death of Antonin Scalia, and as many as 4 more, as many as 5 total over the next 4 to 8 years, based on the ages and relative health of some of these justices. The next president is going to appoint one, assuming that Mitch McConnell and the Senate majority don't allow. I believe it's Eric Garner is the nominee that well, that's not today. I got that wrong. But anyway, the current nominee, we believe that the Senate is going to not hold confirmation hearings, and that the next president, whoever that is going to appoint the next Supreme Court justice. But there may be several more. And in the next audio, that's the focus of Donald Trump.
Hillary Clinton wants to reverse the Supreme Court decision, D.C. versus Heller, upholding the right to keep and bear arms. Hillary said the Supreme Court is wrong on the Second Amendment. That's bad. We've had enough. Wouldn't you say we've had In trying to overturn the Second Amendment, Hillary Clinton is telling everyone, and every woman living in a dangerous community, that she doesn't have the right to defend herself. So you have a woman living in a community, a rough community, a bad community, sorry, you can't defend yourself. This is the most basic human right of all, but Hillary wants to strip it away from women and all others, and Obama, if that's possible, and put innocent Americans at risk. I'm going to put criminals behind bars and guarantee that law-abiding Americans have the right to self-defense. 100%.
And there you have it. The goal at the end of the day is, on this point, for Donald Trump and not Hillary Clinton to appoint the next Supreme Court justice. By the way, I said Eric Garner as the nominee. It's Merrick Garland. So I if it were a hand grenade, I'd have got there. But as a rifle shot, I got that wrong. Merrick Garland is the nominee. But that's the point. And I got to tell you, as I've said a couple of times, I found Donald Trump's speech to be persuasive, and I generally don't. But I also found it to be credible. And for that reason, I think you got to look up the video, check it out, and we'll continue to talk about this. So join us next week. We're at the top of the hour. Join us next week. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.